It was July 12, 1996, during the Summer Sports and Music Festival at the newly opened Staples Center in Los Angeles. The event was designed to bridge the gap between sports and entertainment, featuring performances by athlete musicians alongside established recording artists. The concept was revolutionary for its time, showcasing the crossover talents of professional athletes who had ventured into music during their off-seasons. Shaquille O'Neal was the headlining athlete performer of the evening. At the peak of his basketball dominance with the Orlando Magic, SHAQ had recently released his debut rap album, SHAQ Diesel, which had surprisingly achieved platinum status despite mixed critical reviews. His confidence in his musical abilities had grown significantly with his commercial success, and he genuinely believed he belonged on stage with legitimate rap artists. Tupac Shakur had been invited to the event as the headline musical act, representing the authentic hip-hop community that SHAQ was trying to break into. The contrast between the two men was stark. Tupac was widely recognized as one of hip-hop's greatest lyricists and most authentic voices, while SHAQ was seen by many in the rap community as a novelty act trading on his athletic fame rather than genuine musical talent. The evening had progressed smoothly through several performances by other athlete musicians, including surprisingly competent sets by former NFL player Deion Sanders and NBA player Chris Webber. The crowd was in a good mood, enjoying the unique concept and the high production values of the show. But everything changed when SHAQ took the stage. Instead of performing one of his better-known tracks, or keeping his set brief and humble, SHAQ had decided to showcase what he considered his most lyrically complex song, Know I Got Skillz. He had specifically requested that Tupac remain on stage to witness his performance, apparently believing that impressing hip-hop's most respected figure would legitimize his musical career. Tupac, who had been planning to leave after his own set, agreed to stay and watch out of professional courtesy. He positioned himself at the side of the stage, clearly visible to both SHAQ and the massive audience. As SHAQ began his performance, it became immediately obvious to everyone with any understanding of hip-hop that something was going wrong. His flow was awkward and offbeat, his lyrics were simplistic and repetitive, and his stage presence, while energetic, lacked the natural rhythm and authenticity that defined great rap performance. The opening verse of I Know I Got Skillz revealed the fundamental problems with SHAQ's approach to rap. I'm SHAQ. You know I'm large. And I'm in charge. Coming at you with the skills that are so large. I got the power and the might. I'm dynamite. When I step up to the mic, everything's all right. The rhyme scheme was basic. The wordplay was non-existent. And the content was generic athletic braggadocio without any of the cleverness, social commentary, or emotional depth that characterized serious hip-hop. But SHAQ performed with complete confidence, apparently oblivious to the fact that his lyrics and delivery were demonstrating exactly why athletes should stick to athletics. He was rapping about having skills while simultaneously proving that he lacked them. Tupac's expression during the performance was carefully controlled, but people who knew him could see the mixture of disbelief, embarrassment, and growing irritation on his face. He was watching a 7-foot basketball player make a mockery of the art form he had dedicated his life to mastering. The second verse of SHAQ's performance was even worse. I know I got skills. That's no doubt. When I'm on the court or when I'm about to grab the microphone and start to flow, everybody knows that I run the show. The crowd's reaction was becoming noticeably less enthusiastic as the performance continued. What had started as excited cheering was evolving into polite applause, then awkward silence, then scattered laughter as people began to realize they were witnessing something that was unintentionally comedic. Tupac remained motionless at the side of the stage, his arms crossed, his face showing the kind of controlled anger that people who knew him had learned to fear. He was watching 40,000 people being subjected to what he considered a disrespectful parody of hip-hop culture. As SHAQ moved into the chorus of I Know I Got Skillz, the gap between his confidence and his actual ability became almost painful to witness. I know I got skills. I know I got game. When I step to the mic, things ain't the same. I know I got skills. I know I got flow. SHAQ's in the house. Now everybody know. The irony was overwhelming. SHAQ was repeatedly claiming to have skills while demonstrating their complete absence. He was rapping about flow while displaying none. He was asserting his hip-hop credibility while systematically destroying it with every bar. Tupac had heard enough. Instead of waiting for SHAQ to finish the song, Tupac walked to center stage and held up his hand in a gesture that clearly meant, "Stop." The music died immediately, leaving SHAQ standing there with his microphone raised, looking confused and suddenly vulnerable. The silence that followed was deafening. 40,000 people understood immediately that they were about to witness something unprecedented, one of hip-hop's greatest artists publicly critiquing another performer in real time. When Tupac finally spoke, his voice carried clearly through the arena's sound system, and his words would be quoted and debated for decades to come. "Hold up," Tupac said, his voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority. "I need to address something that's happening here tonight." SHAQ stood frozen, still holding his microphone, apparently unsure whether Tupac was going to join his performance or end it. "SHAQ," Tupac continued, now looking directly at the basketball superstar, "you a great basketball player, maybe the greatest center to ever play the game. You dominate on the court in ways that nobody else can." The crowd was completely silent, understanding that this apparent compliment was building toward something much more devastating. But this, Tupac gestured toward the stage and the microphone in SHAQ's hand. "This ain't basketball. This is hip-hop. And what you just performed wasn't hip-hop. It was karaoke." The brutal accuracy of the assessment hit the crowd like a physical blow. Tupac had perfectly captured what everyone had been feeling, but hadn't known how to articulate. "You got up here talking about, 'I know I got skills,'" Tupac continued, his voice gaining intensity with each word. "But brother, what you just showed us was the exact opposite of skills. What you showed us was that you don't understand what skills even are." SHAQ's face was showing a mixture of embarrassment, anger, and genuine hurt. This was the first time anyone had ever publicly criticized his rap abilities so directly and devastatingly. But Tupac wasn't finished with his critique. "Hip-hop isn't about being famous," he continued, now addressing the entire audience as much as he was addressing SHAQ. "It's not about being rich or being physically powerful or being popular. Hip-hop is about truth, authenticity, lyrical complexity, and emotional depth." He paused, letting his words sink in before delivering the most crushing part of his assessment. "What you just performed had none of those things. It was nursery rhyme lyrics over a hip-hop beat, delivered by someone who clearly doesn't understand the difference between rapping and talking fast." The crowd was riveted, understanding that they were witnessing a masterclass in artistic criticism delivered with surgical precision. "And the most disrespectful part," Tupac continued, his voice now carrying genuine anger, "is that you performed this in front of 40,000 people who came here expecting to hear real hip-hop. You wasted their time and insulted their intelligence." SHAQ tried to respond, raising his microphone to his lips, but Tupac held up his hand again. "I'm not finished," Tupac said, "because this isn't just about you, SHAQ. This is about respect for the culture that gave birth to this music." He gestured toward the crowd, many of whom were nodding in agreement with his assessment. "Hip-hop came from nothing," Tupac said, his voice now carrying the passion that had made him legendary. "It came from young people in the inner city who had no money, no connections, no advantages except their creativity and their determination to be heard. They created something beautiful and powerful out of struggle and pain and hope. They built this culture with their blood, sweat, and talent." The educational aspect of Tupac's response was making his criticism even more devastating, because he was explaining not just why SHAQ's performance was bad, but why it was disrespectful. "And when you get up here with your millions of dollars and your athletic fame and perform something like what we just heard, you're not paying tribute to that culture, you're mocking it." SHAQ's expression showed that Tupac's words were hitting him harder than any physical blow ever could. This was public humiliation on a scale that even a professional athlete accustomed to criticism had never experienced. But the most devastating moment was still to come. "You want to know what real skills sound like?" Tupac asked, now looking directly at SHAQ. You want to understand the difference between what you just did and actual hip-hop? Without waiting for an answer, Tupac launched into an impromptu freestyle that demonstrated every element that had been missing from SHAQ's performance. I stepped to the microphone with precision and power, while you stumble through lyrics like you've been here for an hour. Your rhymes are elementary. Your flow is offbeat. You're 7 feet tall, but your bars are weak. You got skills on the court. That's your natural gift. But when it comes to the mic, your talent don't exist. Don't confuse your fame with actual ability. What's real hip-hop requires lyrical agility. The contrast was immediate and devastating. Where SHAQ's lyrics had been simple and repetitive, Tupac's were complex and clever. Where SHAQ's flow had been awkward, Tupac's was effortless. Where SHAQ's content had been generic, Tupac's was specific and cutting. The crowd's reaction was electric. They were witnessing exactly what Tupac meant about the difference between real skills and imagined ones. When Tupac finished his freestyle, the silence that followed was complete. 40,000 people understood that they had just seen a perfect demonstration of why some people belong on hip-hop stages and others don't. SHAQ stood there for another moment, clearly struggling with how to respond to such a comprehensive and public dismantling of his musical credibility. Finally, he set down his microphone and walked off stage without saying another word. The immediate aftermath of the incident was chaos. Media outlets across the country picked up the story, and video footage of Tupac's critique spread rapidly through underground networks. The hip-hop community universally praised Tupac for defending the culture's integrity, while sports media was divided between those who thought SHAQ had been unnecessarily humiliated and those who agreed that he had needed to hear the truth about his rap abilities. SHAQ himself disappeared from public view for several weeks following the incident. When he finally gave interviews about what had happened, he admitted that Tupac's criticism had been hard to hear but probably necessary. "I thought my basketball success meant I could succeed in any field," SHAQ said months later. "Tupac taught me that every art form has its own standards and requirements. I wasn't ready to meet those standards." More importantly, SHAQ never attempted to rap publicly again. He quietly withdrew from all musical projects and focused entirely on basketball for the remainder of his career. For Tupac, the incident reinforced his reputation as someone who would defend hip-hop's integrity regardless of the personal or professional consequences. His willingness to publicly critique a beloved athlete demonstrated his commitment to artistic authenticity over popularity or political correctness. The SHAQ incident, as it became known in hip-hop circles, also became a cautionary tale about the dangers of celebrity crossover attempts. It established the principle that fame in one field doesn't automatically translate to credibility in another, and that audiences can distinguish between authentic artistry and celebrity gimmicks. Music critics later analyzed the incident as a perfect example of how constructive criticism could be delivered with devastating effectiveness. Tupac hadn't merely insulted SHAQ, he had educated the audience about what hip-hop should be while demonstrating why SHAQ's performance had fallen short of those standards. The Staples Center incident also highlighted the importance of authenticity in hip-hop culture. Tupac's critique resonated so strongly because it articulated what many people in the hip-hop community had been feeling about celebrity athletes who treated rap music as a casual hobby rather than a serious artistic discipline. 28 years later, the night when Tupac stopped SHAQ's performance, mid-song remains one of the most famous examples of artistic integrity triumphing over celebrity privilege. It demonstrated that in hip-hop, skills matter more than fame, authenticity matters more than popularity, and the culture will defend itself against those who don't respect its standards. The 40,000 people who witnessed Tupac's critique became carriers of a story about the importance of humility, preparation, and respect for artistic traditions. They had seen what happens when confidence isn't backed up by competence, and when someone who has mastered one field assumes that mastery automatically transfers to another. Most importantly, they had witnessed a perfect example of how criticism could be both devastating and educational, both harsh and fair, both personal and cultural. If this story moved you to, hit that like for more incredible stories. Subscribe, and get ready for the next revelation.